As you well know, since I've mentioned it in several videos, one of the reasons I moved to Switzerland is that I have investments in both cryptocurrencies and ETFs. Above all, it really pains me to give over 22% to the Italian state on capital gains I worked so hard for, sacrificing blood and my mental health. In fact, here in Switzerland, capital gains are zero, or at least they should be, whereas in Italy, starting January 1st, 2026, it'll rise to 33%, especially if you hold cryptocurrencies. Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Super Dimi1. For those who don't know me, I've mentioned several times in my videos that I have investments in both the crypto world and the ETF world. Right now, my portfolio is split 50-50, 50% crypto and 50% ETFs. Actually, it should be 2/3 ETFs and 1/3 crypto, but with the recent surge, it's late February 2025, crypto has reached 50% of my portfolio. Am I thrilled? Yes, but not as much as you'd think, because according to my forecast, they should have at least tripled, if not quadrupled. But we'll see. 2025 is still young, and in theory, it should happen by October or November of this year. Nothing's certain, nothing's guaranteed, we'll see. But in this video, we're not talking about crypto. I'll probably save that for a separate video. If you're interested in knowing how much crypto I have, which ones, and why I chose them, let me know in the comments, and I might make a separate video. In this video, we're talking about ETFs, how I manage them here in Switzerland, and most importantly, which ones I hold. I won't reveal the total amount of my investments, but I'll talk about my ETFs, why I chose them, and above all, I want your advice on whether I made the right choices or not. Let's just say I've always tried to be as diversified as possible, focusing on ETFs with good returns. Unfortunately, I can't avoid being overexposed to the United States, though not excessively. I mean, it's not like 90% of my portfolio is in the United States. I've tried to diversify a bit. But first, let's start with the fact that here in Switzerland, to buy and sell ETFs, you either do it directly through your bank's broker, use freelance brokers, or do it like I do, which is with You. Just to be clear, You isn't sponsoring this video, but if they wanted to, I'd be more than happy because I've used it for almost a year and I'm quite satisfied. Not so much with the fees, which are a bit high, though they occasionally offer zero commission weeks. If you're smart, you save up in their savings section, which has zero fees, and buy during those specific weeks, which happen 2 or 3 times a year. It's not perfect, but hey, it's better than nothing. Sometimes you just have to make do. I really like the app because it's a digital bank created by Post Office, one of the major Swiss banks. It's the Swiss Postal Bank, a government-backed institution with physical locations. It's a standard Swiss bank, so it's fully protected just like any other, meaning it's insured up to 100,000 and so on. Besides the fact, of course, of having residency and a physical headquarters here in Switzerland. So this is already a great advantage because we're in a neutral country completely outside the European Union. Actually, you could also open an account with You, even if you're in Italy, even if you're in Germany. I don't know how much it's worth it for you, but you can do it. Anyone can. The point is that you then have to calculate how much you pay in fees having that money outside the European Union. Obviously, the Italian state will make you pay for it without hesitation. They're very sure about that. Because when it's time to give, they give you nothing. But when it's time to pay, they always collect. It's a perfectly normal bank. It has its balance section. You can make transfers. You can pay with QR codes. You can set up automatic payments. It has a savings section where you can automatically move your money and schedule it to move automatically. Or you can do it yourself so you don't see that money and can't spend it until you take it from that section and put it back into your balance. And it has the whole investment part, which is the most interesting and juicy part. In fact, since 2025, it's also opened up many more investments in crypto, which were relatively few before. You also has many ETFs, which is the part that interests us, lots of stocks, more than 400 if I'm not mistaken, and also many bond ETFs, which I don't deal with because all my ETFs by my choice are accumulating because my goal is 20 years. So I'm interested in keeping that money and letting it accumulate for when I'm old, alone, and poor and have to retire. Snap. At that moment, I'll withdraw, hoping the world still exists, that we haven't nuked ourselves, and that the market has always gone up as it has in the last 20 years. Whether it's more or less doesn't matter to me. The interest is in fighting inflation, and if I can also earn 2 or 3%, why not? I opted for ETFs, and currently these are ETFs that focus heavily on America. But since I'm seeing great development from China, which is beating America with AI and many other things, I've decided to put part of my capital into Chinese ETFs as well, which is very little for now. We're talking about 5%. But when I start working again in April 2025, I'll set up a monthly auto purchase for this ETF, which includes the major companies of the East for about 200 or 300 euros a month. We'll see the details later. Well, let's move on to the ETFs themselves. I obviously want to know your opinion, what you think, if I did well or poorly, and if you have other ETFs to recommend to vary things a bit, write to me down below. Of course, I have to tell you that, unfortunately, not all of them are available in Switzerland. There are about 30 that can be purchased. And there's also the Bitcoin ETF, which is really cool. I was thinking about it, maybe when I decide to sell some of my crypto, I'll do it. I'll convert them into Bitcoin or its ETF, then we'll see. Also, because the only reason to buy a Bitcoin ETF is the fact that it's guaranteed by the bank. But since in this bank you can buy Bitcoin directly and it's still guaranteed up to 100,000, write to me what you think down below. So I'll tell you them in a random order. So it's not based on how much money I have or the percentage I put into one or the other. I don't have it handy here, but it doesn't matter much anyway, because my goal is to eventually have the same amount of capital in each of these ETFs over time. So let's start with the first one. Since I've been feeling a bit nationalistic lately, I'm not a nationalist, guys, I'm not even Italian, but I still appreciate Italy's productive power, and I see it, and I know above all that all the debt we have is on purpose, so we don't have to pay it back to Europe. I believe a lot in what Italy can do. In fact, one is the first of my ETFs. It's the large cap Italy iShares FTSE MIB. It's an all-Italian ETF that focuses on the main Italian companies. They're all accumulating ETFs, guys, so I won't say it every time. Unfortunately, it's had a 50-50 split of negative and positive years, although the positive years have always been much higher than the negative ones. So it should, in theory, give an annual return of about 7%, roughly gross. I must say that this year in particular, but actually all of them, have given me great satisfaction. We'll see in the coming years, but I hope the situation improves. Never say never. And anyway, it's an ETF with a risk of 5 out of 7. As for the companies it includes, it has 12% of Unicredit, 12% of Intesa Sanpaolo, Enel 9%, Ferrari 9%, Assicurazioni Generali 7%, Eni 5%, Stellantis 5%, Prismian, which I don't know, 3 to 4%, ST Microelectronics NV 2.62%, and Moncler 2.57%. Basically, it's almost all banking, financial. But I'm not very interested in that. I'm interested that Enel is there too, which had good turnover despite all the crap it's done. And I'm interested that Unicredit is in there, which has excellent returns. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The next one, as I said, is in the Asian part, which is large cap Asian emerging MKTS, iShare MSCIEM Asia. Equal negative years, equal positive years from 2015 to 2024. But anyway, it should provide here too, I think, a return of 5% per year, provided Asia doesn't do great things as I think it will. Probably sooner or later, America won't be able to stay in power forever. So I try to keep obviously a part of America and an equal part of Asia, hoping it goes well. Besides, as long as there's a more or less average return of 5 to 6%, it's more than fine with me. And inside it includes 29% China, 24% Taiwan, 22% India, South Korea. Well, then it has Ireland, which I don't know what it has to do with it. Well, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, in short. And the top 10 are Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, Tencent Holding, ISHMSCI China, Alibaba Group, obviously, Samsung Electronics, HDFC Bank, in short, you name it. The fact is that let's hope it has a good return. I need it to vary a bit so as not to be so exposed to America. Also because it's an ETF that's practically 90% American. Then one I bought recently, also because it wasn't there before, is the benchmark Nasdaq 100 from Invesco. It's QQQ Nasdaq 100. It's been active since December 2nd, 2002. Obviously, this one is also accumulating risk class 5 out of 7. It says here that in the last 10 years, it's had a return of 431%. I can clearly see that from the graph, although in my opinion, a more realistic return will be around 20% per year, provided America keeps going the way it's going. I can't really know. Trump and Elon Musk have come into power. It could be a huge disaster, or it could be something really cool. The fact remains that I've decided to expose myself for a portion, so let's say a fifth of my capital, even to something so heavily American. Why American? Because 97.8% of it is America, there's 0.7% China, Brazil 0.5%, Netherlands 0.4%, basically irrelevant. The fact is that in first place with 10% is Apple, then there's Nvidia, then Microsoft, Amazon, Broadcom, Tesla, Meta, Alphabet, which if I'm not mistaken is still Apple, and Costco, so I don't think it gets more American than this. The next one, not in order of importance, is clearly the World Momentum iShares MSCI World MOM. It's an ETF that has performed very well with a return of about an average, we could say, of 12%. This ETF should include mostly America, but it also has a bit of Japan inside, which I was interested in. It has the United States, Canada, Switzerland, Germany, Australia, but they're practically irrelevant. Inside it has JPY Cash, which should be the part that, regarding Japan, Apple, Eli Lilly, Eurocash, Broadcom, Alphabet, basically the ones we saw before, except I took it because it has this 7.98% of Japanese that I wanted to include. I didn't want to expose myself only to Japan. I wanted an ETF that also included Japan because one way or another, it's still a country that stays afloat. The next one is the ESG Developed World Invesco MSCI World ESG. It's a relatively new ETF from 2019. This one also has an excellent return where it does 15% gross annually. This one also has a lot of exposure to the United States, 68%, but it also includes Japan, England, Canada, Switzerland, France, and Germany. Here it's already more balanced because the United States only covers 68.1%. And as for the companies, inside there are Microsoft, Nvidia, Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, Visa, Broadcom, Tesla, and MasterCard, which are the top 10. The last one, not in order of importance, is the large cap developed world, is the iShares MSCI World, which I think is the most famous of all. In fact, there's probably no need to even tell you. The graph is always on the rise with an average return, let's say, of 9.75%, about 10%. This one also obviously has a very strong exposure to the United States, obviously, which is more than 73%. There's Japan, there are the others, so also some emerging markets, Canada, France, Switzerland, England, Germany, Austria. But let's say that most of it is technology, which was what interested me, and obviously among the top 10 there's Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, very interesting, Meta, Alphabet, Tesla, Alphabet, Broadcom, and JP Morgan. In short, these are all the ETFs I'm exposed to. I know I have a large overexposure to the United States, but it's impossible to avoid if you want world ETFs. What do you guys think? Am I doing well? Am I doing poorly? I'll remind you that my goal is to have the same amount of money in all these ETFs by the end of 2025, so it's as balanced as possible. If you have any ideas or recommend a better ETF, I want it to be an accumulating one to make the most of compound interest, which is the interest that accumulates. And yes, I can't deny that this is also one of the reasons why I moved to Switzerland. If you want to know the others, you can find them in this little book of mine that you can buy below in the description. In PDF Kindle or from Amazon, it arrives directly at your home, and that's a practical guide to knowing how to move to Switzerland, whether it's worth it or not. There are many videos on the channel. I'm releasing them slowly, bit by bit as I can, but if you want to see them all in advance, just subscribe first and get the membership, which costs €2 a month and lets you preview all the videos I've already uploaded that will come out over the months for just €2. That said, I thank you and say goodbye. I'm curious to read your comments, like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell because most of you rascals watch me but aren't subscribed to my channel, guys. Support me so I can bring you more and more quality content. Otherwise, it's useless. I'm just wasting time. Although it must be said that I'd probably do it anyway because this is the hobby I have and I like it and I'm pursuing it more over time. That's all from Switzerland for now. Let's hope 2026 is also positive, even if the big forces will probably send us 4 or 5 years of red and negative markets. But we need this too, because if it were always and only positive, you could never buy. Instead, guys, you have to buy in the deep red. When everyone sells, you buy, and we'll see you next time.